Hello again, book lovers. Do you know, I thought I'd read some Andy McNab. This is the guy who was in the Special Forces, famous for his book about his part in the Gulf War called Bravo 20, which of course has been questioned, but what book isn't? But in this book he tells us the story of an operation in Afghanistan to rescue some hostages from the Taliban. And he doesn't take part in this, so this is a third-person observer. Almost an omniscient observer. It's told as a kind of story in lots of short chapters, with, I suspect, half an eye on making it into a Hollywood film, as we swap around the locations quite quickly, going from control centres in America to caves in Afghanistan. Right, given that this is what one might call an airport book, and Andy McNab is not known as a fantastic writer, simply a storyteller, I think we shouldn't be expecting Dostoevsky here. And indeed, the text is a little bit clunky. A lot of it could have been done with further footnotes instead of interrupting paragraphs. You get a lot of 3 to 6 letter abbreviations, such as NVG, night vision goggles. But then later you might come across NV goggles. Have a look at the end of chapter 2 as well, the last sentence. Of the hostages, there was no sign. A very strange, flowery way to end the chapter. And we get a lot of exposition sentences, such as this. Chapter 33. Alan checked that his made-ready HK carbine was still nice and tight against his body. Full stop. The state of a weapon was important to all soldiers to prevent them from accidentally shooting each other. Safe. No magazine on the weapon, no round in the chamber. Loaded. Magazine loaded with rounds is in the weapon, but no round is in the chamber. Made ready. A loaded magazine on the weapon and a round in the chamber. You get a lot of info like this, which I think could have been enmeshed a little bit better into the text. But, on the bright side, if you're ever in a situation like this, you certainly know the importance of having your helmet on tight and stuff like that. So, here we are, we're in the realms of Spycatcher. Does anybody remember that? That really was badly written. I should say, by the way, this isn't that badly written. It's more in line with Cocaine Diaries, which I reviewed earlier. And at this point, I'm going to stop my snobbish sniping and get into what the book's actually about, because there is a lot to be learned. I also tuned in quite early, page 10, when Miller, one of the fighters, makes this complaint about aid workers. They're always sticking their heads into the lion's mouth with no thought to what happened if the lion shut its jaws. Then they expected people like him to put their lives at risk to save them. He put journalists in the same category. Where did service to a greater good end and selfish risk-taking begin? He knew of one journalist who had to be ransomed or rescued 3 times. On the 3rd time, one of the assaulting Special Forces operators was killed. Well, I read that and thought, yes, I do have this question in the back of my mind, more so with the war reporters than with the aid workers. I found Perez Reverte's book on the Yugoslavian war, called No Man's Land, Tierra de Nadie, to be quite immoral in obsessing over getting a better story ahead of what's actually happening around to the people that you're writing about. Anyway, this sentiment is extremely well expressed by Jack Nicholson in his speech at the end of A Few Good Men. Right, good points about Andy McNab. He knows what he's talking about. He also gives the story from different viewpoints, from the terrorists, from the aid workers, from the control centre, from the general. Tells us the story of 2 of the terrorists, Dala and Sherali, the bandits, who I can only assume was invented because there's a lot of assumed introspection there. There's even descriptions of smells, which you can't even get from films, that take you nicely into the battle scenes. And the enemy is personified. As you do get to see it from their point of view, you get some backstories that try to shed light on why people do what they do. So the meat of the story is that, and you really wouldn't believe the amount of equipment and the amount of training that goes on in these missions. This is a joint UK-US one, by the way, which also underlines this supposed special relationship, which does seem to exist among the armed forces. And as the hostages get separated into 2 caves, they have to change their attack tactics. But imagine this, you're getting helicoptered over an area of Afghanistan pretty much in the pitch black, which is described as being 44,000 square kilometres. Rocky mountains, trees, caves, bad conditions. It really beggars belief that they can carry out these kinds of operations. And yet, they did. I'm not going to give you the spoiler to see who survived and who didn't. If you like what's called a page turner, although I have to say the chapters are so short that you very often turn in the page after having read one or two sentences. So the 340 pages it comes in at is actually probably more like 200. But anyway, it's an easy read. You do learn stuff. It's quite humane. Told from the point of view of someone who knows that Afghanistan is just an invention in our heads and is actually a very complicated tribal region. It's not just us against the Taliban. And it makes you pause a while to think, what kind of ultra-hard people could actually do this job? The physical conditions required would make elite sportsmen tremble. One of our protagonists doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. How do you get by like that? Well, there's a little insight in the penultimate chapter which tells us a sense of humour was a vital ingredient for anyone fighting against the odds. The Royal Marines even made it a part of their commando ethos. Maybe I could have been an SAS soldier if I'd put the hours in.